We got a really great question in about the psychology involved in the world of Agile. So, in the video that we looked at with Dr. Peggy Jones showing how she uses a Kanban board, one of the things that immediately is obvious is some people have more tasks than others. And the question is, how do you deal with that? In the world of Agile, this is the psychology. We're working as a team and it's based on team trust, which is why having an agile approach is very hard if you have not done the groundwork of the team building, the psychology, the honesty, the transparency, and the mindset of, I know you're doing the very best you can at your level. Because in an agile team, you have different levels, but it's based on trust that you will pull your weight. So instead of pushing work to people and saying, you do this, you do that, it's generally, what can you work on in this time box? And it's based on an honesty that the person pulling the work to themselves will pull their fair share, which is why Agile fails on a lot of teams because that team trust and that team autonomy is not there. Which is why we always say the mindset needs to be in place. Number one, you hire the right people. If you're not hiring the right people, they're not going to magically be accountable. You're going to have people trying to cut work. You shouldn't have hired them. So you want to hire people that can work autonomously, that can work collaboratively. When you hire the right people, they will be obsessed with helping the others. Just like in our exercise, where Ed was a single person doing the approvals, and then we talked about other people joining him in making the approvals. That's how it needs to be in the real world. Everyone needs to see this as a team sport. So in Dr. Peggy Jones's example, Michael, who had a ton of stuff, is a very senior technology specialist, and only Michael, here's the problem, is able to do a lot of those tasks. But in the world of Agile, we would encourage Michael to mentor, coach, train, bring other team members in so that in the future they can begin to take on some of those bespoke responsibilities. But it has to start off with that individuals and interactions over processes and tools. It has to start off with give the team the environment. That's number one. Number two is the support that they need and trust them to get the job done. And then the mindset that the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self organizing teams. Something else we have in place for this timeline is the retrospective. So if Michael isn't happy at the work that he's doing and he feels he's doing the lion's share, the donkey work, this is an opportunity for Michael to say, team, time out. This is how I feel. I need support. I need help. And it's honesty, transparency is key in the world of Agile. We don't hide stuff, we don't sugarcoat it. So there's a lot of the psychology that must first be in place. The right attitudes must be in place. The right people must be on the team. And if that isn't happening, then it's hard for you to really be in the spirit of Agile. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, especially if you inherit a team that has a culture that's divisive.
Exactly. There has to be a total revamp of the psychology, a lot of team building from the ground up. And that's why a lot of teams fail in their agile implementations because the mindset is warped and everything they're doing in the world of Scrum or Kanban isn't going to work properly. But that's a really awesome question. Have you used agile on any of you used an agile framework on any of your projects?
I use Agile from my perspective, but it's not a cross-functional action that's used in an organization because the culture is so toxic. It couldn't be adopted. It's too competitive.
Mm, very good point, and thank you for sharing that. And honestly, in organizations where agile is effectively introduced, we take away the idea of rewarding the hardest working team member. No, we offer team rewards, and they're very clear. The team gets rewarded for their composite work, and that just helps people change their mindset. So the competition goes away. Or an example of a team that was told, oh, if you find more bugs, you get rewards. So the team was in cahoots with each other. The developers would put in soft bugs, so the testers would find more bugs and get rewarded. And that's the kind of bad collaboration we don't want. So we want more like a composite reward than saying, oh, the testers get rewarded and the developers, we don't want that. So a lot of it is psychological. And right from the beginning, as you're introducing Agile, it needs to be done with a lot of team thought, team building, team bonding, safe spaces. We want a safe space. And then we also have a clause in our retrospective that does not invite senior management. We say Agile Vegas. Whatever happens in the retrospective stays in the retrospective. So people are more transparent, they're more forthcoming to share what they're truly thinking and how they're feeling. And it comes with a lot of team development. You probably have heard of the 5 stages of team development. So there's forming, there's storming, which the team needs to go through. They need to storm. At that point, they have the scrum master or the servant leader ushering them through, but storming is essential. And then you get to performing, and when you get to performing, after norming, performing, that is where the team is functioning as a well-oiled unit. This is where there's absolute transparency, brutal honesty. There is a divergent set of ideas which are worked into a convergence by dialogue and a feeling of transparency and openness and safe spaces. So thank you very much. That's a really awesome question. We gotta dig more into that question with my buddy Roy when Roy comes on one of these future calls. Thank you very much. All right. Ed, do we have anything else?
Yes. First of all, let me see. We're go. All right, Phil, would you suggest that we start at the top of the organization mindset to understand the governance structure to know how to move/introduce accordingly? As I type this, I'm also wondering about the best questions to ask during the interview to gain insight.
Very good. So is this question about agile, Ed? About starting at the top of the firm when bringing in an agile framework? Is that it? Or
I believe so. Could you
yeah?
type and say the first part is about agile? If so, I think it is.
Okay. So
Mhm.
if you are introducing an agile approach to a firm, remember the agile approach, if it's a framework, is secondary. The most important thing is the psychology. So what I spend time doing right off the bat is introducing the management to the psychology of the world of agile, how to think. The values, they look very simplistic, but they're so profound. The principles, the management also needs to understand what the principle means, and they need to understand we're not saying you don't have any power, but you've got to empower the team so that they can effectively do what they're doing. So it starts off with the top, understanding how things work. Otherwise, they begin meddling in the team's affairs. We don't want that. And the way to prevent that is the right psychology from the beginning. What was the second question, Ed?
Second question, and that was about agile in a toxic environment. Phil, you touched on a little bit of how to best deal with how do you and you just like you said starting out to talking with executive. Let me come on camera. Next part is as I'm typing this, I'm also wondering about the best questions to ask during the interview to gain insight.
Which interview? A job interview, or is that a transformation interview?
Good question.
Can we clarify that?
I
Because if we're
will.
talking about a transformation interview, you need to have an understanding of the demographic of the company. Are they siloed? Do they work cross-functionally? Because if they're not working cross-functionally today, then the likelihood of you to be able to be agile is very diminished. So you got to get that cross functionality going, which is hard because an agile team is T-shaped, it's cross-functional. So you need a little bit from analysis, design, development, testing, implementing, engineering, whoever. You need all of those skill sets to be on a team to be able to effectively work. So if that mindedness and dynamic is not already there, you want to find out. And you should find out. You should also ask the question, why are you looking to use an agile framework? Or are you looking to use an agile framework, or do you just want to be agile to pivot so you can hybridize if you need to? Because some organizations are doing it wrong. Some organizations should be predictive with agile thinking, and it's okay. PMI's research has shown success when you're that way. But we have some organizations who should just totally revamp and deliver incrementally. And we've had organizations, our clients, for example, in construction, in engineering, who changed their configuration. They develop teams to work per project. They deliver, they move as a team to the next project. Instead of having people shuffling around every project, we just have one team that is like a hit team. They work on that project, done. Next project, done. Not bringing people together and going through the 5 stages of team development all the time. So it really depends on what the question is asking. What's the question asking, Ed?
I'm gonna go ahead, Erica.
Hey, thanks. Thank you, team. Thank you, Phil, for another great session. I was thinking more for the job interview, but then when you mentioned transformational, like
Hmm.
that's critically important as well. But yeah, for a job interview, just so we have an idea of what we're heading into
Hmm.
and what the first 90 days will look like for that organization,
That's a
right?
great question. You've answered the question right there. So you can ask the question, what would a roadmap for the first 90 days in this role be? And honestly, that's a question I didn't ask when I got to Honeywell. And at the end of the day, I got in and my boss, immediate boss, he didn't have a clue what his boss hired me for. If I had asked that in the interview, it would have made them perk up and think, oh, what's he going to do? So it's a very good question to ask. You can ask what a roadmap. You could say, what would a day in the life of PM in this role be? You could say, what are the 3 top pain points? You could say, what are the top 3 deliverables that you would like, especially if you're with a hiring manager interviewing you. You want to ask what are the top 3 things that this role would focus on in the first week, in the first 90 days. Who are some of the key stakeholders? Who are some of the key organizations that will be affected by this position or the projects this position is working on, and things such as that. Does that kind of help?
Definitely. Thanks so much, Phil.
You're welcome.
All right, next question, Phil. I do 90% of the purchasing at my job and 95% of the projects in Jira software. How can I use this experience to meet the PMP exam requirements?
Right. So honestly, using Jira is a software tool. So using Jira does not immediately qualify you, of course, for the exam, but it's what you are doing with Jira that qualifies. So you are gathering requirements, you're managing schedules. You might even be managing, obviously, budgets. So if I were you, let me show you what I would do. And again, I mentioned proceed with caution. When you're using AI, proceed with caution, but don't be a schmuck by not using AI. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to use AI. That is dumb. Use AI, but use AI with caution and with respect. And when I say respect, you got to respect your position, right? Because a lot of people, they fail to realize I have more intellect relating to my position, my background, than AI because you are more emotionally intelligent. And if you add that EI to the AI, you just get a bigger payoff. So, what I would do if I were you, I do this. I use AI as my coach. I go in there and I would say, I've been using Jira to manage work that I do for a government agency. Let's call it Agency Hope. And I have been hiring vendors, suppliers, and so on. And I've been managing all of this in Jira. And I've been doing the whole 9 yards of project management using Jira as a solid tool. With your understanding of what procurement is, and assuming that I did this for the government agency Hope for the past 3 years across 4 different programs, I need you to create an idea of how my PMP exam application would look, factoring in the multiplicity of roles that I have played, all with Jira at the base. Give me a very quick initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling and closing description of my role. I did a lot of team building, team meetings, stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement, rallying teams together towards a common goal, and monitoring and controlling the schedule and budget. So, my friends, you already know my disposition. I'm kind of like my disposition is like Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said, someone asked him, they're trying to test him, so they asked him a very complicated mathematical problem, like 500 divided by 0.31 times. They're just trying to test him, messing with him. And he said, use a calculator. Why should I fill my head with things that I can use a calculator to do? Why should I fill my head with nonsense? In the same token, I leverage AI in the same way. Why should I kill myself trying to do everything when I have technology that can help distill my ideas? So you can see the initial idea. This is a fat prompt right here. This is big. All I used AI to do was compartmentalize my thinking and expand on it. But the emotional intelligence behind what I did, I own it. So if I were you, I would do something like this. As you can see here, project management experience breakdown. Define procurement requirements for agency hope, blah, blah, blah. End the story. Now, you as the human, you got to go back in here. You got to go back in here, and I'll just take this and I'll put I'll share the link with you. I generally don't share my AI links, but I'm gonna do it right here because this is family here. So I'm gonna share it with you, and you'll be able to see my prompt and take my prompt and create something for yourself from it, okay? So here's my link. Let's put that in the chat. Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, Hira, good to see you. I didn't notice until after during our break. So good to see you. Yahira is one of my students from way, way, way back. Good to see you on the call. All right. So did that answer the question? I hope it did. Anything else, Ed, from our
Uh,
friend?
no, that's only thing else is everyone is impressed with that. We have some people impressed with your background. So want to know how did you build the background for your amazing presentations, your virtual background or
Oh, you
non-virtual?
mean the background behind me? That's
Yeah.
AI. So yeah, talking about leadership, I'm influenced by a lot of people. Ed influences me to wear suits because I don't like wearing suits anymore, but he always does, so I get influenced. But my mentor, John Maxwell, you got to dig John's backgrounds. And I'm like, when John came to do his keynote speaking for us at the PLI, I'm like, wow, this is a lovely background, John. And I wanted a similar background. So I reverse engineered John's background with AI. Full transparency. Steve Jobs, he says, good artists copy, great artists steal. Well, while I couldn't steal the physical location John was in, I could be creative. So that is an archetype of John Maxwell's studio out in Atlanta there. All right. Anything else?
Leroy did confirm that you did answer the question that he asked regarding the Jira. So just let you
Awesome.
know.
Anything else? Anyone want to unmute and let me go ahead and I'll just pause the recording for